Resilience. You belong here. Resilience from Within, brought to you by ADMS. We are here to remind you that you're not alone. Here, we talk honestly about real challenges, meaningful growth, a space for connection, encouragement, and resilience. You belong here. Resilience from Within, brought to you by ADMS. We are here to remind you that you're not alone. Here, we talk honestly about real challenges, meaningful growth, a space for connection, encouragement, and resilience. You belong here. Resilience from Within, brought to you by ADMS. We are here to remind you that you're not alone. Here, we talk honestly about real challenges, meaningful growth, a space for connection, encouragement, and resilience. You belong here.
Welcome back to the podcast. We're excited to see you tonight. Welcome to Resilience Within. We are here tonight. I bring with you a wonderful guest who is going to help us bring change and bring voice to a very important topic. We're talking tonight about transitional planning and how appropriate it is as we've changed the clocks. We've sprung ahead. The weather has been wonderful. The sun is shining, and that's exactly what I think our podcast is going to do. It's going to shine a little light. March is Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. So we welcome this conversation about transitional planning tonight. And with me, I want to introduce Dr. Stephanie McGowan. Stephanie, I'm so excited to have you in this work with me tonight. To share your passion.
Thank you, Jill. I'm thrilled to be here, and something tells me this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a matter of fact, a few years ago, my best friend said to me, you have to find a hobby. And I tried a whole bunch of things that had interest in my life, and I dabbled in a few things, and then I met the people at ADMS, and there is where I found where I could find a hobby. And that's my podcast. So welcome. Thanks. So Stephanie, why don't you start by telling us just a little bit about yourself and what you do now and how you view transitional planning.
Thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, for such a lovely introduction. I think I'm at the transition in my own life. So I wear lots of hats. My husband says my head is well suited to wear hats. I don't know that he wanted me to wear as many hats, but I welcome every one of them. So professionally, I work for the South Bergen Joint Venture Commission. Mm-hmm. I'm the Director of Transition, Work-Based Learning, and Community-Based Instruction. And I'll talk a moment about how I wound up back there after many years, almost 30 years in education. I've been a teacher and a principal, and I had all of these amazing journeys that brought me to higher education in the preparation of teachers and other school professionals, particularly in special education. And so all of that has brought me to the South Bergen Joint Venture Commission, all of those experiences. So that's professional Stephanie. Mm-hmm. And then there is community Stephanie. And 12 years ago, hard to believe it's 12 years already. 12 years ago, I began my journey as a councilwoman in the borough of Rutherford. And I decided to seek out public service, partly because I felt like the voices I wanted to hear weren't represented. Mm-hmm. And I loved my community so much. And I believe so deeply in inclusion with a capital I, that when I didn't quite see it the way I had hoped, mm-hmm. And I really so wanted it to be, I took a leap of faith, something I thought I would never do. Most people who know me know that I say I hate politics and politicians, and so the fact that I jumped into politics and I embraced being a politician in a different way with purpose mm-hmm. and a cause, mm-hmm. Has just been incredible. And so I'm in my 12th year doing that. And then maybe the role I'm most proud of. My husband Jeff and I are the proud parents of our twin children, Amelia and Jeffy, who are now 19. Mm-hmm. And that pains me to say because I'm going to have to go see my hairdresser to color in those grays. And Amelia and Jeffrey changed my world. They changed how I saw the world.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that our journey would bring us into the world of disabilities, but it did.
Mm-hmm.
And like so many other parents and families, people we know and love in our own lives, we were terrified.
Mm-hmm.
We were so afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And now I sit here 19 years later, and I tell you, these two beautiful people who I'll talk more about as we go on tonight, and they most certainly have informed how I see transition, how I hope we embrace transition, and truth be told, a very unapologetic way of looking at the journey that Jeff and I have been on. They have made us the best version of ourselves.
Our children do.
Yeah, they sure do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know all those Stephanies that you're talking about.
And she's all right here.
And in one package, you really bring so much to other people in the community, as a leader in your profession, and as a mom and a dear friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who have certain gifts. And I always say to myself and friends and colleagues, it's our job to find our gifts, and then we have to give our gifts. And so in each role that you play, I know that you have an opportunity to do that. And I am privileged to see the impact that you've made in all of them, including your children, because I've worked closely with you and Jeff in the work that you do. And I think it's important to say that this podcast is really for that purpose, to share our voice, to share our choices, to share our experiences. And ADMS supports that kind of work, whether it's with transitional planning, whether it's with supporting you with your ideas or collecting questions to help you make better choices. And I stand proud to be in that work. So I'm really happy that you're here tonight. And we are going to focus on transitional planning. I know you have a lot of expertise in that. Do you want to talk just a little bit about exactly, for our listeners, what is transitional planning and when does it start to impact? We've been having that conversation a lot, but just to give some clarity for our listeners.
Well, first I want to say, I love the fact that this is targeted at families, because for those of us in the disability conversation, it starts so early on, and it's an evolving conversation. And so when we talk about transition, I would actually argue it's probably the worst language we could use for it, because for a family or a caretaker or a guardian, all of this is a transition from birth until question mark.
Parenting is
correct. It's I would say it's so similar to families that are helping typical individuals go through adolescence, prepare to go to college, have conversations about being in relationships and getting married and having families of their own. Those are all transitions. So by definition, right, transition actually starts at 14. So the first exposure families have to this concept of transition really happens in a school-based setting. And if it isn't, it should. And if you didn't know that, you should ask. So when an individual turns 14 and you're sitting in your IEP meeting, your individual education planning meeting with your child study team, and sometimes there's a variety of professionals who are in the room, the conversation changes at 14 to start talking about the trajectory of the next 7 years.
right. What's the journey going to look like?
Correct. And by the way, I guess not unlike every single human in the world, every journey is unique. So the path and opportunities that are afforded to you are similar, but how that is created, how that programming is created should be, because that's what an individual needs, right? Because the goal is to provide experiential learning, experiences in job exploration, in life skills. And then ultimately, the North Star for all families in transition is, how does this individual become their most independent self? So that's the first leg of what we call transitional services. So it starts at 14. And if you think about a scaffold, it's going to keep spiraling and spiraling up, right? So everything's very introductory. 14, 15, a little more introductory, 16, right? So if we're starting to think about sophomore, junior year, we're now coming out of that exploration. Perhaps you're going out and you're trying a job out in the field.
Right.
Think about an internship in a college. Well, we create that opportunity through transition age programming for individuals with disabilities, particularly developmental disabilities, in that high school timeframe, with the goal that for individuals who can move on at 18, who do not move on to what we call transition programming, 18 to 21. Some individuals at 18, they stop and they're done. And there are services that are afforded to them, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and some of which you've already begun referencing. And then the second leg is transition for 18 to 21-year-olds. And this transition programming is a little more specific because, truth be told, the time frame.
Yes, it's very, very slender compared to the other time frame between
Correct.
14 and 18.
Correct. And not everyone does 18 to 21. And by the way, just because you start 18 to 21 doesn't mean you finish to 21. And so I talk to our team about understanding a sense of urgency. Every time they touch something new, every time they go out into the community and they practice how to be their most independent self, every time we model a social activity that enables someone to have an experience in recreation, do not assume that is happening when they're not with us.
Right. On a regular.
Correct. Because you may need all those support services to make it happen. So it's all about exposure, right? Giving the most opportunity. And then individuals turn 21, and it's after they finish, they have to be 21 during that year. They move into that next year. And this part is the part that I find so frustrating, both as a professional and as a parent advocate. We use words like, the students fall off a cliff. Think of that connotation.
Well,
Imagine
it's like
being pushed off a cliff.
the partnership kind of ends.
Right.
So support is kind of like dismissed.
Right. And so the reality is, I think it's just been couched the wrong way. It's not about support ending. It's about it transitioning. It's about evolution, because as individuals become 21, they're no longer school aged, which means the school district is no longer involved. You're not sitting in those annual IEP meetings.
You're not having constant conversations with teachers who really know your student and really know the family and trying to give them all these ideas. And it kind of just takes like steps back and further back.
It does.
And parents often feel less supported.
They do. And partly because everything I've talked about was the experience for the student, but you didn't hear me say anything about the preparation for the parent.
And the families.
And the families and the guardians and the community. And so I think I want to redefine things. I know that's going to shock you, that I want to.
That you want to create something?
Correct, because this is my...
Take an initiative?
Well, let's think about this. Just because it is doesn't mean it should be.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And that's what I was talking about earlier about having a voice and making a choice.
Correct. And so this voice in this moment, and so thank you for giving it a microphone. The reality is, I don't choose to see post 21 being a cliff. I choose to see it as the beginning of opportunity. So what does an individual need to be their most independent, joyful self?
But isn't that the journey that we're all on?
We should be on.
Everybody.
Correct. And yet, and I've made this joke with you earlier about how even the word special education makes me crazy, right? Because those of us in the business, you know this as a special educator. Any educator would tell you that special education is the greatest form of pedagogy, the best way to teach all individuals to learn. So if that's my preface, if that's what I believe, which I do, and I know you do.
I do.
And I know the people listening to this are probably cheering and yelling right now. So, my apologies if you had to put down your glass of wine or cup of tea, mea culpa. But the reality is this. we need to change the conversation. So when we talk about what does transitional services look like post 21, this is where we start talking about working with agencies. You'll hear things like DDD and DVRS, but there are these amazing agencies
like ADMS.
Correct. That enable families to educate themselves, to work with budgets that individuals get through the process of eligibility of DDD or DVRS if they're doing work exploration. And so the truth of the matter is no different than I was a middle school teacher for years, and it stunned me how many parents used to say, oh, we're already looking at colleges. And I would say, slow down, like enjoy high school first. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you have an individual who's coming into those the transition years, 14 to 18, 14 to 21, have those conversations. Start looking at what these agencies do. Think about the individual you love, the person that you have been given this great gift to advocate for. Are they independent enough that they are able to work with support? Is this individual going to need a setting that would enable them to require greater oversight, perhaps a day habilitation program? But do they want to be in one that's very active? Or are they quieter?
Right. What setting would be best for them?
Correct. Doesn't that start to sound like when you take your kid looking at colleges and you say, wow, they're all great, but this is the one they pick? That's how we should embrace this conversation.
I agree.
The difference is that for our individuals, whether they are our children, whether we are their guardians legally, whether they're family members, caregivers, their community, as people age, it could be their neighbors, it could be their nieces and nephews, by the way. The conversation doesn't end. It's a continuum. And just like we evolve, these individuals evolve.
But we don't know what the capabilities are if we don't give them experiences and trial and error and constant reflection. I mean, isn't that really what great transitional planning is?
Correct.
You know, I read something today as I was just kind of going through some social media, and it said autistic children become autistic adults. And it left me really in this space to just kind of think about that.
Yeah.
As a family member, you know, you're raising a child with an IEP, you're raising a child with disabilities. And sometimes we get very stuck in the moment that we're in. So a second grader, a 7-year-old, behaviors, you know, transitioning into like preteens and the hormones that come with some complexity, right? Sometimes we get so in that zone that we can't think about really the next day. It's a day-to-day living. And I know we've talked a lot about that, Stephanie, and it's really hard to sometimes, you know, coach people and talk to people about what are your long-term plans when they're stuck in the sometimes morning to afternoon. Let's make it through the morning. Let's make it through the afternoon. You know, oh, we've made it through the afternoon. Now if I could get bedtime to work tonight. And, you know, even raising young children myself, I was definitely in that zone. Let's get through the workday. Let's get through dinner.
Yeah.
How do you really guide parents to think about this long spectrum, even like the 14 to 18, even the 18 to 21?
Yeah.
How do you get out of that day to day and make it more of a long stretch of plan?
So the first piece of advice is to give yourself some grace. The journey of being the parent and the caretaker is extraordinary. You know, for Jeff and I, we have 2 children. They, you know, the fact that they were born on the same day is I think, part of the comedy relief of our story, because we really didn't know the road that we had, right? And I think about a couple things that you just talked about, right? The idea about an autistic child becomes an autistic adult. It lends itself to a story that I think is pretty germane to the how do you get through the day? How do you get to a place of even thinking forward? when you're, they say small children, small problems, big children, big problems. So I would equate the same for this, right? But there's a couple nuances. So I want to keep coming back to this concept of giving grace. There is no handbook for parents of how to care for an individual with disabilities. And I want to, I'm actually going to pause myself right there, because this idea of identifying somebody by their disability versus by who they are and their gifts is problematic, right? And so the grace is, along this transition you're talking about, it happens when you move from, I need to get out of bed, I need to get them out of bed, can I get them on the bus? Can I get them home? And I can take a breath because everybody finally fell asleep. And for my families out there who are listening, who struggle with children and adults with behavioral challenges, I know that this is probably something that is very personal and challenging and difficult to hear about. When the goal of the day is to know that you lock the door at night and everyone's in the house and safe, and you permit yourself to close your eyes to go to sleep because you think it's safe to do that, that is something not everyone can understand.
Unless you've experienced it.
Correct. So that's grace, right? That's for some, they may never make it past that. For others, as individuals and our children and the people we love mature, and we get into a rhythm. Often folks will say, and I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, and so, my apologies if anyone's listening that may have said this to us. There's two things that are said to me or Jeff and I that usually you'll see me smirk. The first is, you're only given what you can handle. I would like to meet that person and take them in the back alley because you clearly don't. You give me way too much credit, right? So that's one. And the second is, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another
fresh
day.
start.
Tomorrow's going to be better.
Yes.
For some of us, it's Groundhog Day. It is the same story every day, right? So number one, the grace to say where you are today does not have to define where you are tomorrow. So give yourself grace. Number two, surround yourself with people if you're fortunate enough to find them. And if not, trust yourself to ask great questions. Find the helpers, right? When we think about when you work with young children and something goes wrong, we say, find the helpers.
Yes.
Find the helpers. They are
Who
everywhere.
are your people?
Who are your people?
And Stephanie, you're lucky enough because of the work that you do and the person that you are that people find you. And not everybody is that fortunate. And sometimes it's really very isolating.
And sometimes it's very hard to be the person that people come to. Right?
Yes.
I promised you that I'd be unapologetic. The reality is, it is hard. It is hard to receive someone's pain that you so intimately know, that you value every word, you value the tears, because it comes from such a place of knowing. And then to be so frustrated to not know how to help. So when I think about that idea of find your helpers, find your people, the reality is it's not always who you think it's going to be.
Well, that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast.
Correct.
We've created this safe space for families. We're inviting people to share what they'd like to hear.
Yeah.
We're asking people to reach out to us and give us feedback so we can really help people who might be feeling the same way you're describing, very alone, not knowing where to go. And sometimes we have great ideas of how we're going to make an intervention, but we just can't get ourselves there because we're so busy trying to just make it through the day.
Correct. And that's, so when you were talking about making a plan, how do you get to the part of the point of transition? So I think to my own story. Amelia and Jeffrey were born on the same day. Amelia was baby A. Anybody who knows our family, and I will tell you, no surprise she was first. There was no way she was going to come second to Jeffrey. Even if she was baby B, she probably would have pushed him out of the way to get out. And so Amelia was born, and when Jeffrey was born, there was a deafening silence that happened in the room. It sounded like a car crash to me. And I remember hearing the doctor say, "Did she have an amnio?" And it went deadly silent in the room. And about 100 doctors and nurses came running in. The doors flew open, and I was terrified. And I was looking at Jeff. We're looking at each other. We had no idea what was going on. We went from this high, this moment of this is extraordinary. Our daughter was here, and we were so excited to welcome our son. And to hear that question, and you're laying there helpless. And a few moments went by, and they took Jeff to be with Jeffy. And my doctor walked over to me. And you know, obviously we had talked over years. He knew that I was an educator. And he said to me, "Do you know anything about Down syndrome?" And I stared at him in complete disbelief.
Right.
And he said, he goes, "Why am I asking you?" "Of course you do. You're in education." And that was my first experience as a mom, feeling like I wasn't prepared. That I had been asked to do something that I couldn't do. How could I be given this beautiful baby? And the first question, I was already failing the test. And I was too embarrassed to say no. I was too scared to ask what it was. And so that began our journey with Jeffrey seconds after he was born. And he went through a whole host of health issues, of which we're not talking about right now. But many of our families who have individuals with disabilities in their life who are going through these transition services, right, both school age and beyond, are also dealing with these co-issues. So in Jeffrey's case, he had significant heart defects that really, he shouldn't have made it with us. But he's certainly here for a reason and has been, and as both of them are. And so I share that moment because we are conditioned as parents that we're supposed to know everything. Right. We're supposed to have the answers. Our kids look to us for it. The truth is, we don't. And what makes this complicated is that even in a handbook for individuals with disabilities, every disability is unique to itself and to the individual. It presents itself differently.
Very differently. That's why sometimes people have trouble like zooming in and narrowing in on what exactly they're working with.
Correct.
And that changes as they evolve and they change.
And so our story with Jeffrey was trying to survive his illnesses, right? Trying to keep him alive, right? I mean, like the lowest basic function, right? And keep Amelia moving along at the same happy time. Well, a few years go by, and we have Amelia go to preschool because she was not going to preschool daycare because for Jeffrey's health issues, it was just safer to keep everybody inside. Yes. So we had all of our services coming into the house. And so Jeffrey, at birth, presented everything to us. Here I am. Here's all my challenges.
Right.
Figure it out.
Right. It was like a list.
Correct. So imagine my surprise when the teacher says, "Have you ever thought about bringing Amelia to a developmental neurologist?" And I say, "No. Why do you ask?
I've been focused on this other urgency in my house.
Well, and she's amazing.
And she can do everything else."
Well, because here's the truth, right? She was able to play, right? Jeffrey wasn't able to sit up, but she could sit up. Jeffrey couldn't feed himself, but she could.
Right.
Jeffrey couldn't hold a book, but she could.
Right.
Right.
And they're twins.
The
same age.
Correct. And clearly, there was just going to be one in this challenging situation. And so that's when we were introduced to the world of autism. And I share this very personal part of our journey, because how I saw my role, not just as a mom, how I saw being an educator changed. You were talking about finding a hobby before, right? I need to find hobbies and things to do in this world. And the reality was, this was going to become my hobby, but it was actually going to become part of my identity. Mm-hmm. Because the more I knew, the better I felt, the better life they could lead. And that meant empowering myself with knowledge.
You told me a story earlier that people tried to offer you books. People tried to give you information.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what that felt like when people saw that you were at a point of frustration and needing support, and people tried to offer you books.
Yeah. So I know this is going to hurt you because you are a self-proclaimed bookworm. So,
I am a literacy
mea
lover.
culpa,
Yes, I am. But
right?
go ahead and tell your story.
I'm so sorry. I know this is terrible. The truth is, people would send me books all the time and poems. Mm-hmm. And they were sending it from a place of clearly loving concern.
Yes.
The number of folks who sent me books about Down syndrome, this is the life of a child with Down syndrome. This is what you can expect with a person with Down syndrome. What is Down syndrome and how do you need to change your house? Where should you live? What's the right state to be in? Do you have to give up your career? Should you be stay-at-home mom?
Big conversation
This is
there.
like, should you be ready to fight your public school? Like, let's go. Every book, you name it, all the books. I got all the books. I was so angry. Apologies to all of you who sent them with the biggest of hearts. I would file them under G. And by the way, I didn't just place them in the garbage. I threw them in the garbage. The thought that my child, the people I love the most in this world were going to be defined by somebody who sat behind a typewriter talking about all of that disability. They were so focused on the disability, we weren't talking about the person.
That's right.
And that was my transition moment. Mm-hmm. That's actually when I believe I've embraced what we're talking about today, which is the transition, life transition. There is a moment, and I wish for everybody listening, I could tell them it happens on this day or this year. It's this milestone. But the truth is, I think it happens
when it's supposed to happen.
Organically, when it's supposed to happen, that the conversation moves from fighting, moves from demanding that people understand how hard this is for you. And it moves to celebrating the success of these individuals you love so much and really honing in on what brings them joy.
Yes, you have to find the win.
You do. You have to find the win. And I'm thinking right now of a very dear friend who Amelia and her daughter met when they were 3 on a swing set. And, again, autism being this gigantic umbrella, both of them had this diagnosis. And I remember this mom saying to me, "Are you sure? Because that's not what it looks like. Like my daughter can't do that."
Right.
And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm sure she could do this." And we kind of got into this whole thing. Well, P.S. all these years later, right? This is a young adult now. This beautiful young woman who found her love in ballroom dancing. And mom posts these pictures. She's phenomenal. I can't walk and chew bubble gum, right, at the same time. And here is this extraordinary young woman who, by the way, found an alternative way to communicate using spelling, right, which is its own thing. Because that's what worked for her, because that's what her family, that's what her people, that's what her mom and dad, who fought so hard to make sure that she was going to be seen, that's how they found a way to tap into her beautiful road towards independence, what it meant for her. That road's not the same for my daughter or for my son, but it doesn't make it any less exceptional and amazing.
No.
Right? And so for me, as we talk about transition and as we continue to evolve this part of the conversation, what I want to encourage people is to challenge themselves. When we're tired, and I know it's hard for you to believe that I get tired because I do, but I do all of these things in my life. I've embraced all of these things because it's what helps me find my purpose and makes me feel like I'm fighting to give my kids their best shot at independence. And while I'm fighting for them, I'm going to fight for a bunch of people who might not know they need to fight yet. And at some point, I'm going to get tired. But if I do this right, if you do this right, if this organization does this right, if the people listening in their moment do this right, we get to pass it on.
And that becomes the legacy, Stephanie.
Correct. And that becomes a legacy.
And, sharing our stories, sharing experiences are how people grow.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm a book lover, and as much as I do read a lot of informational text so I can coach people and so I can work with families and I can help them dig deep, it's the knowledge that I bring from the text, but it's really the personal relationships. And it's really tapping into everyone to find their gift. I mean, that's why you're here today.
Thank you.
Your
Thank you.
stories of resilience, our podcast name, help support the work that ADMS does. We support transitional planning by helping the individuals find their strengths,
Right.
to help us define what makes that person. And that really is the journey that all parents are on. I have 2 sons myself. One's going to be 21 this week and one's 19. But we're all on this journey to find strengths and build upon them. And children are children. Adults, too, are on a transitional plan. I'm in my 50s and living the best life I think I've ever led. I look back 10 years ago and think where I was and now where I am. And it's because I'm always reflective of what works, what didn't work, what are my strengths, how can I build them, how can I share them. And we're all trying to grow great people. And I know with your daughter particularly, we've talked a lot about how sometimes, she exceeds the expectations and finding a place is a struggle. And so it's the life experiences that we give our children that help us to identify strengths.
Correct.
We were taking a nice stroll in the town. It's similar to our town.
Right.
And I couldn't help but saying to you tonight, this town is very much like where we live. This might be another step where you could take her to kind of see if she can mimic the behaviors. I'm always thinking like that for kids. As we prepare children to go to college, as we prepare them to go, I'll never forget the first interview my son went on, what do you bring with you? The resume, let's get it together. How would you present it? How are you comfortable? Seeing the questions, getting their readiness level.
Yep.
So do you want to talk a little bit about parenting a child who doesn't fit the exact fit when you're looking for programs? How do you define what the next step would be? Do you challenge? Do you try to explore opportunities? And what's the struggle for you as a parent? Because I know we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah, that probably is the thing that keeps me up the most at night. So as I started this by telling you that I literally have the privilege, I work at the South Bergen Insurance Commission. I have had the privilege of working with these extraordinary professionals. It's a public school that is focused in addressing individuals with disabilities. So it's a special education commission. It serves a lot of Bergen County. It has students who are on the autism spectrum, multiple disabilities, emotional regulation, impairment, right? So behavioral challenges. I work with these incredible individuals. We are constantly having this conversation about what do we do? What can we do better? How do we give opportunities? And all of it culminates in this 18 to 21 program, right? So here I am every day, working with families, working with our transition coordinator, working with these incredible professionals that do this day in and day out, the related services people, and we're talking about how to tweak programming and starting a coffee bar and right? Because all of these things prepare individuals to have an experience to get a job.
Right.
And then I look at my situation with my daughter, my daughter, who participates in an excellent transition program at the Banyan schools, and she is surrounded by extraordinary professionals. I can't help it. She just comes to mind because when I think about who do I want to emulate, I think of someone like Melissa Wish.
Right. She's your mirror.
She is that person. We have parallel lives. We have similar experiences with children. And here she's doing something similar where my daughter is. And she will call and say, this is great, but she can do more.
Yes.
And I laugh because I'm that person to other people, but even I need that person.
Yes.
And it makes you start saying, okay, well, these are the programs that are out there. Well, what are we doing for these individuals?
And in our last podcast, we talked about how it takes a village.
Yeah.
We talked about how we need different kinds of people in our lives to help us along our journeys. And so here you're saying, like, it's a teacher who kind of takes you into a different way to look at it. Because you're so zoomed in on the everyday. So getting back to that whole idea.
And I'm an above average bear, right?
Right.
You come this every day.
And you come with such knowledge. But
I'm ready.
You empower all these other families.
Correct. And here I am. I come home and I sit with Jeff and we look at each other and we go, And so having the ability to bounce these ideas off, but also this is, where I want to challenge people listening. We spend a lot of time looking in because we're so deep involved in our situation. I'm going to challenge people to pick their head up and look out because it's those conversations. Okay, listen, she's enjoying taking these experiences for paraprofessional. Now, there's some humor in this. Both Jeff and I are special educators, right? This is what we do for a living. Never in a million years did I think that my daughter would want to do something in a school. I didn't have perspective. But when someone who knows us, who's encouraging us, who's providing that support, that leveling up, that community, that group says, well, Stephanie, why are you surprised? She's home every day with her brother. She knows how to help someone who's nonverbal. She has patience. She understands manding. She understands hand over hand. She knows the right way, the right tone to encourage an individual. So, okay, first, admittedly, I sat there and cried like a baby. Because that was not the gift I thought I would give her as her mom or Jeff thought we'd give as her dad. But what a beautiful gift her brother gave her. And in return, what an incredible gift she has given him. Right? And so notice how the arc of my conversation is changing a little bit right now from the heartache, which I think is just inherent to I don't care if it was someone who is struggling with dyslexia or making sure they enunciate their S's, right? I don't know that any of that, right? I'm not going to categorize and make one more important. Every one of us who's ever had this moment with their child, right? We want to see that growth. So when we think about what can we do for individuals that they're showing the signs of that independence, but they still need support. So how do we build that? And by the way, the one thing that I appreciate the most that partly why I came back into K-12, someone said to me, right? Dr. Kuchar is the superintendent of the jointure. He is a longtime advocate for individuals with disabilities. He said to me, so what do you think we should do, Steph? And I said, well, I think we need to build this, 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 and this. And he said, all right, let's do it. And I said, you sure about that? And he said, just because we don't do it doesn't mean we shouldn't, right? And this philosophy of, we can overcome those kind of challenges. We just need a moment to take a breath.
That's right. And plan.
Yeah, and a plan.
But isn't it true, Stephanie?
And that's why also when you're talking, I'm so sorry, but when we're talking about even the programming, right? The transitional services, that's all a part of the discussion. Just because her school experience will stop doesn't mean her growth as a human isn't. We want it to keep going.
It's supposed to continue on.
For her greatest independence, by the way, no different than you and no different than me.
So I know we were talking earlier about all these things we've done because we have definitely had different roles professionally
Lots
and
of hats.
Lots of hats. And I also understand that very deeply. I wouldn't be here today if someone didn't say to me, you know what? I see something in you.
Yeah.
And when I met the owners, they brought me in. I loved the work. I shared in their stories. And they said, I see you doing a podcast. And I thought, well, I have a theater background and I love to speak. And this is definitely my passion, whole child, take it all in and differentiation. This has been my world for years. Yeah. Why wouldn't I do a podcast? I've had people like my husband is like your husband, and he looks me in the eyes and he says, you should write a book. And I said, I'm not ready to write a book. I haven't even started the podcast. And
he does know you love words.
And he does know I love words. And we were on vacation this summer getting pictures on a cruise. And he said, wait, she's going to just take your picture. I said, what's this picture for? And the photographer said, I heard you're writing a book. So it's in our lives, we can understand that. Yeah. People see things in us. People get to know you. And that's why I think I want to talk just a little bit about, before we close tonight, about the village that's around us. Yeah. Because it's the people that get to know us closely who see things in us. And I say this to you, even when we met years ago. You empower me. I watch you lead. I invite you into things that I do because we inspire together. And it's our job to continue to do that. We want to leave this legacy. We want to teach teachers. When we first met, we were both like in education and talking about if we could just get 2 more teachers to buy into this, 4 more teachers, 5 more teachers. When Jeff was beginning education, I spoke with him and modeled for him and invited him in to work closely with me. We want to show people how to tap into strengths, to find what works for people. Isn't that what the IEP planning really is? Correct. And sometimes when I think about my journey as a parent, there was this wonderful moment between 14 and 18 where they unfortunately stopped listening to me as much, but we're listening to other people. Yeah. Grandma said this when I was there. Right. Do you think she was meaning this? My teacher said this to me. I've been saying it to you for years, but my teacher said I should do this, and I'm going to try that out. Right? Correct. The coach, my kids were involved in sports. Yeah. The coach kind of persuaded me to do this. So I'm going to run this as a leader. Right. Really? I've been telling you could be a leader all your life. 100%. So it's really the transitional planning for families. At some point, after we get through the pain and things start to get a little bit easier because we live this life every day, we open ourselves up to community. Yeah. We open ourselves up to resources. And some people are not ready, but the school provides it. And there's this wonderful time, it is my hope, that with good schools and good programming and the right people, and we've come so far in inclusionary expectations and the vision of it. Right. Parents feel supported. Yeah. They get to know a couple of people they can count on, who probe questions, who provide thinking time for them, who bring in other people into meetings to kind of say, well, I see your child in this class, they do this, but in the cooking class, do you know they do this? Or this child really doesn't talk too much, but we hear from other teachers, but they do this. And we start to tap into strengths. How do we find that? When the partnership of schools ends 14, 15, 16. And the student sometimes is very involved in their transitional planning. Yeah. How do we continue supporting families beyond services like ADMS, who works very close with families? Where do we find them in community?
First of all, that is probably the biggest question you could possibly answer. So I'm going to actually strategically hit it from a couple different places because I define community in so many different ways. So the school-aged conversation, one thing that and the team that I am privileged to work with, we constantly have conversations about not overthinking what's happening on the other side of that request. I'm thinking about a dear colleague of mine, Michael Farrelly. He's with the Graham Family Schools. Extraordinary educators. The work they do for individuals with moderate, severely disabled, developmentally disabled individuals, and then also their post-21 work, right? So they're on both sides of this conversation, right? Okay. He had asked me to come speak to his faculty and staff many years ago. And I was so reticent to do it. And he said, but we feel like sometimes the parent voice gets lost in all this, Stephanie. We're so worried about compliance that we lose that student-centeredness, right? Student-centered planning. That's really what you're talking about right now.
Yes.
And so I gotten up there and I was so nervous, which I know is kind of funny to hear me say to you, but because it was so deeply personal, and I was sobbing, like, the crying when your nose is running, and you're like, there's no tissues, so you're like, I was a hot mess, but instead of being embarrassed by it, I just kind of embraced it because I felt like that was also what I felt like the people in the room needed to see.
Because they're feeling it.
They are, and also because I think sometimes, like I said earlier, people think that I have all the answers, and I think there's a moment of truth and honesty, my truth and honesty, which is, I'm learning like everyone else. I'm just choosing to be a mirror because that's what makes me feel stronger so I can fight the next fight. And I shared a story with everyone that I was teasing them. And I said, I know when you see all the buses line up, because most of out-of-district placements, kids come out of bus.
Right.
And I said, I know when the buses show up in the morning, you're all thinking, great, they're here. And they're all laughing. And I started to cry. I couldn't even catch my breath. And I said, you're thinking, great, they're here. And there is a parent who's terrified right now that they put their 3-year-old on a school bus, who's crying because they're going to make that call and they're going to find out that they made it here, right? And it's that moment of community, right? The vulnerability to learn to trust. And we go through that, and most of us have good experiences. I want all of us to have a great experience, school-aged, for our individuals, because that helps us identify those tracks for these individuals, everything we're talking about, in expanding your community, to find agencies like this one, to find post-21s like New Beginnings for Tomorrow, for finding these organizations whose sole purpose is to bring joy, sunshine, and help somebody become their most independent self. Like that.
Somebody
that's
on
what
your
it's
side.
About.
Yes,
but I
is.
share that with you because that's just one dimension. I've poured myself the last few years particularly, and I use the big word advocacy. There are people who are far better at it. The Paul Aronsons of the world, the former ombudsman for the state of New Jersey, who's a dear friend and an incredible confidant and just an amazing human. And so many who are in the fight for access for all, inclusion, who are talking about supportive housing, who are talking about workforce employment opportunities. That's the continuation. When we talk about transition services, when we talk about DDD, when we talk about DVRS, right, getting vocational learning opportunities, when we talk about post-21 programming, when we talk about rehabilitation programs, this is all with the thought, the belief, the hope that we are going to advocate for safe spaces for the people we love, that when they are 40 and 50 and 60 years old, when my children are still walking this earth far beyond the years that I am, that they are able to live in residences that are safe, that provide them opportunities to live great lives, to be in community, for them to begin that self-directed learning, that planning. At some point, it's not just about us anymore and what we want for them, it's what they want for themselves. And no different than any other parent or family member. The greatest gift that we can give is to help them find their voice. And sometimes that even happens for individuals with no voice of their own.
Yes.
Right? They could be the loudest. And so I feel like now, as we talk about transition, I want to put this out there. This should be the first of many conversations, right? And not just between you and I, but I hope that someone at home is listening to this right now. I hope there's a professional right now that's saying to themselves, I never thought about that. How can I expand my community? What don't I know?
Because isn't that what this is all about, Stephanie?
Correct.
Nothing is set. You've said it in personal experiences tonight. You've said it professionally, that we can't just stop here.
No.
We did not hit a destination for these children and these young adults. And transitional planning is such an appropriate thing to talk about this month.
It is.
So developmentally, disabilities, all these words we keep saying, inclusion, and thinking about transitional planning, there isn't an end to this work.
Correct.
So with you, I want to say that this is the beginning of many conversations.
Agreed.
And as people evolve, as our children evolve, as this world continues to evolve, we have to keep zooming in on what works, what doesn't work, and what could we do next. I can't thank you enough for being here tonight. I know this could be a podcast for 24 hours, but thank you for sharing your voice.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your gifts.
Thank you.
More importantly, thank you for sharing stories.
Thank you for giving an avenue to share them. I thank this organization for providing opportunities. This isn't just about turning 21. This is the lifespan. And I really want to thank you the most for understanding how important this conversation is, and not shying away from talking about what's hard and what's messy, because it's important. And that is you.
Yes.
That is you.
Well, anyone that knows me knows I like to identify barriers and think about the
down,
next
Jill.
steps. Let's think about those next steps.
Let's go.
So I wish you a lot of luck
Thank
professionally.
you. Thank you.
I wish you a lot of luck personally. And I know there's great things ahead for
I'm
your
ready
kids.
for you to come out and advocate away with me.
I'm with you,
Get
Stephanie.
your marker. Let's make a sign. I'm sure there's something or someone that needs a voice. So
Yeah. Well,
Thank
it's
you.
about voice and it's about choice. So we have to empower each other. And that's what this podcast is about. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second podcast. What a great conversation we had tonight with Dr. Stephanie McGowan in transitional planning. Join us again, and we'll see you next month.
Until next time, thank you for being here. You're not alone. Until next time, thank you for being here. You're not alone. Until next time, thank you for being here. You're not alone. Until next time, thank you for being here. You're not alone. Until next time, thank you for being here.